Naturally, Meghan attempted to spin her downgraded Netflix deal, what had once seemed to be her one saving grace and last hope for something to work out into a positive narrative that the partnership had been extended. No, not so fast. That is not what happened at all. Today, I have the inside story on the whole Meet Me at the Lake adaptation, an angle that the mainstream media has entirely missed, and on the wider Netflix deal fuss. I became unwell just as this news broke, so I had not been able to film for some time. I am sorry that this is somewhat delayed, but there is still interesting material that, to my knowledge, no one else has picked up on regarding Meet Me at the Lake, so do stay tuned for that part. After a couple of weeks of sustained negative press about the ending of Harry and Meghan's Netflix deal, reports that executives had no appetite for anything new from the couple because naturally, why would they? We heard it directly. From Netflix sources, they were not interested in renewing the deal, nor were they particularly keen to extend the contract. That position has not changed. A first look deal essentially means that a company has the right of first refusal because of what it has done for you over the last 5 years. Yet, at present, it is not especially interested in pursuing much more. In truth, nothing has changed. A few weeks ago, I uploaded a video outlining the arrangement Netflix would retain a first-look contract with the Sussexes, providing them with a safety net of sorts, so that if the Sussexes, by some fortunate stroke, had a good idea or wished to produce another ill-advised interview-style special, Netflix would have first refusal. However, Netflix will not commit any further funding at this stage unless it chooses to pick up a project that the Sussexes have pitched and agrees to help bring it to fruition, which seems rather unlikely. The arrangement also allows the executives at Netflix to save a little face alongside the Sussexes, unlike Spotify, which was so exasperated and put off by Harry and Meghan that it quite happily severed ties. Everyone knows Netflix is primarily interested in recouping some of its investment and in securing any major exclusives, such as a divorce interview, that might draw viewers away from their competitors. Once the contract was signed, the first look agreement, Meg issued a statement to the press about it and attempted, but failed to reframe the arrangement as an extension of the partnership, essentially trying to make it sound better than it was. The media, gullible as ever, ran with the story. That was all rather frustrating and disappointing, particularly given that nothing had changed from the reporting of the previous week. Nonetheless, alongside her statement, she said that they had agreed to a With Love holiday special, and that Meet Me at the Lake was still in the pipeline. We shall return to that in a moment, so please stay tuned. As many of you rightly pointed out, the holiday special appears to be yet another opportunity for Meghan to try to rival Catherine the Princess of Wales's Together at Christmas concert, which it is unlikely to displace and no one wants. More of Meghan, particularly during the festive season. Sources have revealed that this is directly tied to efforts to salvage some of the investment in the advertising sales, which have plummeted. They are underperforming and are not following the growth trajectory that had been anticipated. Because, as I mentioned earlier, that precedent proved false. They think that around the holidays, a small number of fans will be inclined to buy some of her overpriced, lacklustre goods as presents, and so a holiday special as a one-off episode could support that aim. Meghan alluded to this in her Bloomberg interview, even remarking, "Oh, especially as gifts. These things could be great as gifts, so it is plain that this is the intention." What is less clear is whether the holiday special was filmed at the same time as last summer's batch of episodes, whether it was shot alongside season 1 or as part of season 2, because I suspect they might have given that the outfits Meghan wore in the season 2 episodes looked rather autumnal and rather Christmassy. She favoured reds, particularly burgundy, which was the closest she came to colour. So it is uncertain whether the special is already in the can or whether it is something new that they intend to film now. I do not imagine many have much faith in Meghan being able to accomplish that within such a time frame. It took her over 6 months to deliver the first batch of episodes, and a total of 13 months for the second batch to be released. So a 2 to 3 month turnaround for a holiday special seems beyond her capabilities. I would not be surprised to learn that it was filmed the previous summer as part of the original batch of episodes. For that would mean that Netflix had already captured the footage and had, in effect, incorporated it into the old contract, the agreement that has since expired, and that is why it already appears on the schedule for this holiday season. It is not a new commission from Netflix for a holiday special, though that remained unconfirmed at the time of writing. Setting all that aside, allow me to share with you what I have learned about the film adaptation of the book Meet Me at the Lake, for that is the only other thing that Netflix and the Sussexes have confirmed on the schedule as of this moment. Apart from a short minor video involving Harry, that is likely another project incorporated under the previous agreement. Setting all that aside, let me share what I have learned about the film adaptation of the book Meet Me at the Lake, because that is the only other item that Netflix and the Sussexes have on the schedule at present that is confirmed apart. From a short video that Prince Harry most likely has as another project preserved under the terms of the original agreement. By preserved under the terms of the original agreement, I mean anything created under the umbrella of the first 5-year deal. Anything initiated during that period still has to be brought to completion. The new contract covers only material made or picked up afresh from that date onward. From the way Meghan worded it to the press, one might think that the Meet Me at the Lake film is a fresh commission under the new deal, but it is not. This project was initiated in August 2023, and so it too was carried over under the old arrangement. Essentially, all content begun during that 5-year agreement that has just ended remains obliged to be finished. It is being fulfilled as part of that prior commitment. It is rather like having already been paid for the work and needing only to finish the job. It is not a new contract, and it is not new money being invested in a project that belonged to the old agreement. Yet, from Meghan's phrasing, you might well be forgiven for thinking, wow, the first look deal already has a film picked up. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, through Archwell Productions, own the film rights to Carly Fortune's novel Meet Me at the Lake, and have been working with Netflix to adapt the book for the screen. In August 2023, via Archwell Productions, they acquired the film rights, and the author confirmed the news on the 7th of August 2023. Netflix paid about $3 million for the rights, and the book's themes appealed to the couple, leading to its selection as their first Netflix adaptation. However, there have been no public updates on the project as of August 2025, and there have been no announcements regarding a director, a screenwriter, or a cast. Reports and rumours suggest that the project may be stalled or cancelled. Some reports indicate the Netflix deal ran for 2 years, possibly expiring in early 2025 if no progress occurred, but we have not heard any confirmation of that. Carly Fortune has recently signed a new deal with Amazon MGM Studios for another book adaptation, which some observers take as a sign of Archwell's lack of progress on Meet Me at the Lake. It is possible that Carly Fortune's agreement with Archwell Productions contained a 2-year exclusivity window, during which she was unable to sign new deals for other books, and thus Archwell and the couple had a 2-year period in which to try to bring the adaptation to fruition. That window has now lapsed, which helps to explain why she is also working with Amazon MGM Studios on a separate adaptation. You may reasonably wonder how Archwell Productions can be said to own the film rights when Netflix paid $3 million United States dollars for those rights. The distinction lies in the way such partnerships are structured in the entertainment industry. Archwell Productions, as the producer, acquired the rights and is responsible for developing the adaptation, hiring a director, a screenwriter, and the cast, and overseeing the creative and logistical work while Netflix, acting as the distributor and financier, provided the funding necessary to secure and support the production, including payment for the rights, and will handle distribution on its platform. It may have been that Carly Fortune's arrangement with Archwell Productions included a 2-year exclusivity window during which she could not sign new deals for other books, so they had that 2-year period in which to try to bring the adaptation to fruition. That window has now expired, and she is consequently working with Amazon Metro Goldwyn Mayer Studios on a separate project. You might reasonably wonder how Archwell Productions can be described as holding the film rights when Netflix paid $3 million United States dollars for those rights. The distinction lies in the typical structure of such partnerships. Archwell Productions, as the producer, holds the right to create the adaptation and manages the creative and production process, hiring a director, a screenwriter, and the cast, and overseeing the work required to make the film, while Netflix, as financier and distributor, typically provides the funding to secure the rights and will distribute the finished picture exclusively on its platform for an agreed period. In practice, that means the Sussexes will, in most circumstances, be responsible for production costs through Archwell Productions. For projects that they have not had Netflix greenlight in advance, with Netflix acting as an enthusiastic partner only when it chooses to be. Even when Netflix signs on the platform, may offer only limited investment, $3 million United States dollars to fund a film is modest and is unlikely to be sufficient to produce a high-quality picture. That level of funding suggests that Netflix is reluctant to commit further cash to projects associated with the Sussexes unless there are clear results-driven assurances. With each project governed by its own terms and stipulations, Netflix can therefore control how much money, if any, it provides, and can set conditions regarding creative control and budgeting. Conversely, Archwell Productions could choose to finance a project entirely itself and deliver a completed film to Netflix for consideration, but that approach carries the risk of rejection and the potential loss of the funds invested if no distributor picks it up. Do leave your thoughts in the comments on whether you think the film adaptation of Meet Me at the Lake will ever reach production, for so far there has been no discernible progress, and hopes remain slim. Episode 3 opens with Meghan Markle carefully preparing a small bundle of picture books for Tan France's family, as he has 2 young children. She includes her own book, The Bench, along with a few others. That particular book, however, is not truly a children's book. It began life as a poem written for Prince Harry, was set into a picture book format, and then marketed as if it were intended for little ones. It is not in truth a proper book for children, and to many reads as sentimental trifle rather than literature for the young. Yet the act of offering one's own book to someone one has not previously met, especially when the book is as poor as this one, feels unmistakably self-indulgent and rather cringeworthy. The second-hand embarrassment in that opening scene is already off the charts. I do not think I would do that. I do not think I could bring myself to present my own book as a gift upon a first meeting. It strikes me as far too self-aggrandizing. Etiquette-wise, it is an odd choice. And character-wise, it is baffling. What on earth are you doing? It is simply peculiar. This episode introduces yet another guest, Tan France, who rather outshines Meghan and shows a far greater aptitude for arranging. He assembles a fruit plate. Thank goodness it is spared any wilted flowers, but she then turns to arranging the French toast that Tan has prepared and fondles it only to ruin it with wilted blooms. Shame, shame. Wilted flowers on French toast would be revolting. Powdered sugar, butter, some kind of topping, fruit maple syrup, a creme glaze, a delicate vanilla drizzle, toasted coconut, but never a dead flower. The moisture from the butter, or the maple syrup, or from any source will at once make the toast soggy, and it will feel unpleasant in the mouth. She rather does not seem to understand how to handle real food. This episode contains many close-ups, accompanied once more by rather obvious voiceovers, much like the previous instalments. The producers clearly made a great deal of effort to attempt to repair the impression steering the narrative with numerous course corrections that were rather less about Meghan and more about appearing interested in the guests, which is, to be fair, a commendable aim. Yet the cut and paste zoom in and add a voice-over formula feels choppy and peculiar. It sits oddly within the episode and is rather conspicuous. They did, to be completely fair, achieve a seamless sound in the audio itself, but as a whole viewing experience, it nevertheless fails to feel wholly seamless. One can tell. Perhaps it is because I edit my own videos as well, and I am apt to notice when there is a noticeable edit or chop. But it rather disrupts the flow of the episode to move from a normal, relatively well-composed, zoomed-out shot to, all of a sudden, an abrupt cut to an extremely tight, close-in framing. It is not the most pleasant thing to watch, and it draws the eye to the fact that this is yet another moment that required a voiceover to be added in post-production, or some cut-and-paste trickery afterwards, which in turn prompts the question of just how much of the programme has been redone and reworked. One suspects a great deal. The best part of the episode is Tan, particularly in this scene. He actually cooks every day and prepares French toast for his children for breakfast almost every day. He has a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, so you can imagine how picky they can be. He admits it may not be the healthiest choice, but I will say that French toast, if you stir a little unflavoured whey protein powder into the custard, can be quite nourishing. Top it with fruit and use a light syrup or none at all, and it can provide a decent amount of protein. For a small child's breakfast, it is not a bad option. At least they are eating something. Anyway, he really does cook like this every day, and when he arrives, with a jumper draped over his shoulders, he simply rips it off and tosses it out of the kitchen. Meghan watches a little affronted, insisting that this is authentic, that he is being real. She goes on to declare that if anything does not belong in the kitchen when she begins to cook, especially when she intends to cook in earnest, it is immediately thrown or kicked out. She says that she will not run laps around the house to put things away while she is in the middle of preparing a meal. She will heave that rubbish out of the kitchen as quickly as she possibly can. That is precisely what he did with his jumper. Remember Meghan, the pretentious pseudo-cook, who kept her jumper around her shoulders the whole time she pranced about making food? The contrast is remarkably striking and rather delicious. I am so pleased to see someone set a proper example of what it is actually like when one is cooking. One would never wear a jumper over the shoulders while cooking. I said that I would never, and you said that you would never, but now we have an example before our very eyes. One cannot help but admire him for it. One recurring theme with Meghan is that she frequently betrays herself. She often exposes herself as something of a pretender. For instance, when Tan France explains that his husband bakes bread every day as a way to calm his mind throughout the day, Meghan replies that her coping mechanism is a glass of wine. Ugh, that is rather unbecoming. I must confess that I am somewhat judgmental of mothers, particularly those with young children who claim that they require wine merely to get through the day. Such moments reveal a questionable aspect of her character, and I suspect she believes it will seem relatable that all mothers will respond. Same. I too require so much wine to get through mothering, but no, I am sorry. That is not the case at all. And that is not how most mothers I have ever met behave. It is frankly ridiculous. Anyhow, Tan's genuine, bubbly and charming energy confounds Meghan on several occasions. She cannot really keep up with him. He is fabulous, and he does not overthink he is simply sincere, and that is unmistakably charisma, rather than Meghan's calculated, scripted and contrived attempt to sell a particular image at any given moment. It is all the more striking how disingenuous she appears when she entertains guests as dynamic as Tan. The craft she chose for this episode, rather irritatingly, was to make aprons for the children, and there are, however, a few caveats. It is charming to outfit children. With aprons, do not misunderstand me. I have aprons and chef's hats for my own children, and we have made our own aprons on many occasions using fabric paints. It is enjoyable. It involves the children and excites them about helping in the kitchen. Encouraging children to assist with cooking exposes them to a wide variety of foods, even those they might not yet be willing to taste. And the sensory experience of handling different textures, smelling the aromas, and seeing the colours and shapes of food, of getting their hands into the ingredients, provides an excellent foundation for developing culinary tastes later in life. That aspect is entirely sensible. However, she selected this craft for Tan, whose children are 1 year old and 3 years old, and then she asked him what their favourite colours were. The 3-year-old may indeed have a favourite colour, perhaps a different one on different days, but the 1-year-old is not yet old enough to have a stable preference. It is rather obvious. Did she not note their ages? Or had she not listened when Tan mentioned them? Moreover, a 1-year-old is hardly ready for an apron. So, what is Tan to do with it? Keep it for 2 or 3 years. It is puzzling that no one corrected this. It makes her appear inattentive, as if she had not paid attention when her guest stated how old his children are. It is rather absurd. For this little craft, she used fruit and vegetables as stamps for the paint, which worked quite well with the citrus and the artichoke because they have so much texture. Then she took potatoes and used cookie cutters to turn them into shapes, hearts, stars, and little balloon silhouettes. She sliced a piece of potato, pressed a cookie cutter into it to cut out a balloon shape, and then used that potato cutout to stamp the balloons onto the apron. I am sorry to be blunt, but that struck me as rather unnecessary and overly complicated. Surely one could simply buy ready-made star heart and balloon stamps, since manufacturers make many paint stampers. It looked more difficult than it needed to be, rather impractical and unnecessarily fiddly. Tan was even trying to use a fork, which only made the whole thing more awkward. It was almost as if she had never crafted before. And one thing is certain, you are not going to make things easier for yourself by inventing extra steps when simpler tools already exist. We also watch her wrap presents on 2 occasions in this episode, once at the beginning and once again towards the end. This repeated focus on gift wrapping is a recurring flaw in her content. It is dull, repetitive, and better suited to a YouTube short or a social media channel than to a television programme. To see the same mundane task twice in a single episode feels excessive and makes for poor viewing. It gives the impression that there was not enough substantive material to sustain the programme, so the producers relied on filler that neither informs nor entertains. Ultimately, it reads as padding intended to create the illusion of a reality show, a succession of small actions offered simply so someone may be seen existing when there was nothing more compelling to present. The Guardian suggests that this series is so painfully contrived that it becomes genuinely fascinating, awarding it 2 out of 5 stars. The Duchess of Sussex returns, with more deliberately whimsical celebrity get-togethers, and she is notably still sprinkling flowers over everything. I like recipes that take like 4 hours. I do not do quick recipes at all. I like to braise, she tells Chrissy Teigen, and one can almost hear the polite eyebrows raise with, "Wow, that is so fascinating," followed by the quieter sceptical, "Is it though, is it, Netflix it seems," is clearly gambling that it is for the second series is upon us, albeit accompanied by the news that the Sussex's new deal with the streaming platform is not another $100 million extravaganza. In truth, it was reported to be closer to $20 million, but rather a less spectacular first look agreement that gives Netflix first refusal on any shows the couple create. Tan France pops fresh bread into the toaster before making French toast to make it more absorbent. That is so good for people to know, observes Meghan, and the refrain of they is it though echoes in gentle variations as we return to watch what Meghan is quietly cooking up or assembling from fruit flowers, twine and name tags in a stranger's kitchen in Montecito. The reviews for this season are oddly amusing. Watching critics tear it apart is almost comical because the whole thing is so absurd, and it has helped me to get through it to hear others commiserate. One reviewer noted that Chrissy Teigen's presence made her considerably warmer to the show, and even suggested that she might voluntarily watch a lifestyle series presented by Chrissy. For all the mistakes she has made, and the occasionally questionable choices in her persona, Chrissy possesses a warmth and charisma that the reviewer argued Meghan lacks. For Tan France, Meghan produces lavender grey lattes. Does that not simply sound rather chic? I am not entirely sure. It rather recalls a curious take on a London fog, that is all. After that, the hits keep coming. Meghan presents yet more fruit platters, grapes, creating the kind of bounty I mentioned earlier. She displays a passion for motherhood that was evident even in early childhood when she spent her pocket money on a real nappy bag for her dolls. She offers affectionate anecdotes about Harry and still issues no apology for calling the child Lilibet. She used the phrase moving meditation twice, which, if I have properly translated from California Fahrenheit into British Celsius, seems to mean any little ritual one takes oneself off to perform, rather than filing for a divorce. Not that there is any suggestion such thoughts ever crossed her mind. All is well in Meghan's world. It is so boring, so contrived, so effortfully whimsical, that, do you know what, in the end, it becomes almost fascinating. You find yourself wondering things you would never normally wonder, such as what it would take for me to embark on making vegan macaroons, how much of Meghan wants to run screaming for the hills, how excited I could become about tiny eggs from my silky chickens, and what if I were being paid the thick end of 100 million to do so before my original deal ran out.